MMALockup, banned in New York, but available in the free world.
Welcome back to MMALockup. This is Bernard Oliver, joined by Jeremy Hurt. Next up, we've got Dr. Gary Furness on the phone. Guys, make sure you go like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, both of those at MMALockup. Look us up on Google+. Follow Jeremy on Twitter at Jeremy Hurt.
2 T's.
Follow Bernard _ Oliver. That's Bernard _ Oliver. All one thing. Yeah.
1 V.
1 V. Dr. Furness, how are you this evening?
I'm doing fine. I'm going to hopefully try to keep up with you guys.
Oh, it's a barrel of laughs before we came on the air, isn't it?
No, you guys are good.
So we were talking, the reason we were laughing so much, guys, is because Dr. Furness and Jeremy and I were talking about this Wanderlei Silva and Chael Sonnen beef going to the next level. The funniest thing about that video, I forgot to mention when we were talking, was when Wandy rolled up on Chael was like, whoa! That was one of the funniest things to me because at first it was funny, and then automatically a switch got flipped there.
Yeah, I think he thought he was seeing a Brazilian ghost for a moment.
It was weird because you always see Chael. He's got like this prepared script in his head, you know. He's always rolling from, and he's just like flustered. He's talking trash like Rashad does, you know, like just flustered and makes no sense. Like, you're the one that's gonna get it.
You know what he sounded like? He sounded like the three of us if we were trying to act tough.
I can run faster than Wanderlei, I think. Hopefully.
Yeah, hopefully so, right? Well, Dr. Furness, what did you think about this whole thing? Do you think Wandy's going to get the fight he's looking for?
For his sake, I hope not. I don't think it'd be a very long fight on his feet. He may go down quicker than the last Brazilian. I think it would be a really, really ugly fight for him.
Yeah, with Chael destroying Shogun the way that he did, I don't think Wandy stands much chance. You take Shogun striking away, I feel like you can take Wandy's away from him.
Yeah, and without trying to disrespect Silva, I think if they had this fight maybe under Pride rules, in Pride with Pride-sized Wanderlei, it might have been a fight, but not these days.
Definitely. I think he's doing a very good job of marketing, though. He's turning the Chael Sonnen, repertoire on its head and using it against him.
Yeah, it seems to be pretty effective. I think, though, it's kind of like making a really simple drink. Take 1 Chael Sonnen, 1 Brazilian, shake and stir.
And it seems like that's a formula that they're going for in the UFC.
Yeah, well, it works.
Definitely. Well, we got a little bit of a card here next week, midweek. We got a UFC Fight Night on Fox Sports 1. Stacked card. I know you said, I told everybody on Facebook that we were talking to you this week, and you said it might be one of the best free cards that we've seen in a while.
Yeah, I mean, it sure looks like it. When you look at the main card, every single fight, I think, has got some real potential fan interest. With the exception of Mark Hamill, I kind of worry about his health, but everything else, though, looks very, very competitive.
Yeah, and actually, before we get to that main card, our friend Dave Mitchell is actually fighting again. We got to see Dave fight in Las Vegas, and it was not to his liking, but I mean, it was great to meet Tom Call and Dave's family in person. It was a great time that we shared after the fight, and I'm looking forward to him in this fight. Yeah,
I think he, frankly, is pleasantly surprised he's been given another fight. When you look at UFC's recent, kind of policy of cutting guys after a loss or two, or in the case of Akami, after 1 loss out of 4 fights.
Yeah.
So Dave really wants to make the most of this. He's at a real turning point. Ironically enough, this week he just accepted a position with a Fertitta-owned casino here in Northern California. So it's kind of interesting how the UFC tentacles have really kind of branched out. But Dave is very, very loose for this fight. He's the most healthy he's gone into a fight that I've known in the last 3 years. So I think even though it's in Brazil, he's got a real good chance of doing well.
Yeah, we're going to try and get him on for next week. I know he's getting ready for a fight, so he might not be very accessible, but we're going to try and get him on before the fight. Might not air next week. We might throw it online a little bit early. But Dave, man, we wish you all the best.
Yeah, no, he's just a great guy, and if you got to meet him even after that loss, you know what a class act he is.
Switching gears just a little bit, you mentioned the fight is in Brazil. Obviously, time-wise, there's not like the jet lag as far as you're not going 6 hours into the future time-wise or 6 hours in the past or whatever, which there's no time travel, but I mean time zone-wise. Obviously, time zone-wise, it's not a huge difference. Can you as a doctor, can you kind of explain, is there still kind of a drag on the body, a drag on the system from going to an entirely different, I mean, it's not east-west, but it's a different hemisphere, I think.
Yeah, no, I know entirely what you mean. There, I think, is two main culture shocks. Even if you get to fly first class, which I don't think the UFC sends you, 12 to 14 hours in the air and through airports, that's very tiring. And when you look at guys, especially other than heavyweights, that are trying to cut weight at the same time, not lose their edge in their cardio training, I mean, it's a huge, huge strain. And however it works out, if you got two guys, one who's staying in Brazil and has been there for several weeks, one who's traveling to Brazil, that's an enormous advantage to the gentleman who's already there.
You guys are listening to Fox Sports 1190. This is MMA Lockup. You're joined by me, Bernard Oliver, and Jeremy Hurt. We have the greatest ringside doctor in the history of ringside doctoring, Dr. Gary Furness, on the line right now. Dr. Furness, still good over there?
Yes, sir, but I'm blushing.
I'm good. That's what I was going for. Get that? I was going for that compliment that'll get you to turn red.
Yeah, well, the problem is I have no hair, so even the top of my head turns red.
Dr. Furness, moving on to the main card here. Let's start at the bottom. Mike Pierce versus Paul Harris. Mike Pierce has gone on record this week as calling Paul Harris a cheater in many respects. First of all, his gargantuan physique at that class is kind of an anomaly, and he went on record as saying he got popped for some things in the past. Also, that he holds submissions too long, as the referee goes in, tells him to stop, and he holds it, for a couple more seconds. What's your view on that?
Well, he definitely does do that. It isn't just in UFC. I mean, if you YouTube some of his jiu-jitsu matches, he does exactly the same thing. So he has a pretty good mean streak for doing that. And fortunately, it's not a common trait, and it's not particularly pleasant. He is interesting in that over time, I have not personally seen that his striking is particularly improved, but at least he seems to be struck less. So I guess what I'm trying to indirectly say, I think he's a lot harder to knock out or really clip than he was 2 or 3 years ago. And certainly his size for his weight class, I mean, the guy seems like he's molded. You look at St. Pierre being a giant in his size. Paul Harris is even more impressive or intimidating.
I think they call him Tree Trunk, right? Isn't
that
his
do,
nickname?
But you know my favorite nickname for him? Paul Harris.
I saw you do that in the email, and I was like, is that like a funny thing? Explain that.
It's kind of a takeoff professional wrestling, and it's the only place I go on is MMA Weekly regularly, but he's routinely called Paul Harris, and it's kind of an inside joke.
That's kind of funny. I can definitely see that. That being aside, I think you're definitely right there. He is struck a lot less than he used to be, and I feel like if you are hitting him, you're probably knocking your fist against those gargantuan shoulders he has.
Yeah, and I think initially he was subjected to, when he was trying to do jiu-jitsu, that he kind of left his head open when he would sometimes go for his ankle and knee bars, and he seems to have closed that loop. He's faster, and he's just downright scary.
Yeah, he's a very intimidating fellow. Mike Pierce saying that I'm not really intimidated by him. I know he's going to cheat, and I'm going to go in there and fight against it.
Yeah. Well, it's like when some guy gets hit in the face and he looks at it and shakes no, or does something along those lines. Sorry to say, that's usually a sign, A, you got hit, and B, he probably is intimidated.
Rightfully so. Well, moving on to the next fight, on one of the other fights on the card. There's so much to talk about here. Is there one that sticks out to you, kind of, Dr. Furness?
Well, the one I'm really looking forward to is Dillashaw versus Raphael.
Yeah, that fight. I mean, like I told you earlier this week, I think that fight's going to be fight of the night, hands down. I think that one's going to be fight of the night because the other ones are probably going to be over too quickly.
Yeah, they could be. And with this fight, you could see anything from a first-minute submission to a 15-minute stand-up war. It's really going to be fun to see, and for it to be on free TV is a treat. But I realize it's not considered co-main event status, but I agree with you. If I had to pick one of the top 6 of the top card, this would be my choice ahead of time for being the best fight.
What happened to TJ Dillashaw? Like, when he first showed up, when his name first started getting put there, it was like, this guy's the fighter of the future. This is the prototype guy. Like, seems like he kind of fallen off a little bit. Am I crazy? Bernard's laughing at me. Am I crazy?
No, I don't think you're crazy. I think he may just be kind of one in the pack of Team Alpha Male, though. When you look at all the guys on that team from 135 up to 155, that is really a team of studs.
Yeah, definitely. I think Alpha Male is being led by Faber right now, and Faber is a great leader for that team. And Dillashaw, he's kind of arrogant, which is really weird because he looks like a really nice guy. He has a nice face.
Team Alpha Male.
If that's, if that's not weird to say that he has a nice face, but he is kind of arrogant.
I'll leave the facial characteristics to you if you don't mind.
No love there, huh?
Well, I'm in California. I got to be very careful what I say.
All right. Well, moving on. Moving on to the next fight. I think we've only got time left to talk about the main event here, but you guys make sure you check out Thiago Silva against Mr. Hamill coming out of retirement, and Dong Hyun Kim and his next fight. I know he was very disappointed with his last fight that he had, but the main event, Shields versus Maia. What did you say, Johnny?
That is a fantastic fight, the Dong Hyun Kim fight.
Yeah, he's disappointed, but that was a great fight that they had. So you guys make sure you look at that one. That's the co-main event. Shields versus Maia. I have not been impressed with Jake Shields in the UFC. He, in Strikeforce, was a completely different fighter, and I don't know what happened. Maybe the craziness of fighting GSP is your first fight back in the UFC, or I don't know what happened. He just never looked like he did in Strikeforce. So, like I told you earlier this week, Dr. Furness, I think this fight's going to end fairly early with Maia's hand raised.
Well, it is interesting, and I come from a perspective of definitely being a Strikeforce doc. I mean, I've done 4 or 5 times more Strikeforce shows over the years than UFC's, and fortunately I got to see Jake in a lot of really, really good fights. It's hard to say what has actually happened. I know one thing I think that did not help him on his way to the UFC was bouncing back and forth between 170 and 185. He's not a super huge 170 guy, and when he fought things like Dan Henderson at 185, I think that really threw him off for a while. But I know he's not making excuses for himself. And then there was the loss of his father, who worked as his trainer, as his manager, in fact was his father. So there were some things taking place before he went to UFC that were pretty unfavorable.
Do you think in a fight like this where obviously on the ground Maia's got the edge, but Jake Shields has outstanding jiu-jitsu. I mean, I say obviously. I think it's obvious. I mean, Maia's kind of in a league of his own in that regard, but Jake Shields does have pretty good jiu-jitsu, and one thing we've seen ever since that embarrassing fight against Anderson Silva is that Maia has been on a exponential curve upwards with his hands. I mean, they've been better and better each fight. What do you think the odds are that these two guys actually stand up and that's where the majority of the fight takes place? Well,
I think that's a good point, and I think when you look at both their takedown defenses from their base, Jake's from grappling and Damien's from jiu-jitsu, that it could turn out that way. Unless they both are kind of willing to go to the ground, I don't think if one really resists that, they could be on their feet virtually the entire fight. Jake does have some good dirty boxing. I don't think Jake's intimidated by Damien's jiu-jitsu from the fact that when you look at MMA jiu-jitsu, it's a little bit different. And when you can throw elbows, you can strike. It's a different perspective.
And from that different perspective, you know, again, he may not be intimidated by it, but I think you would have to probably give the nod to Maia. What about on their feet? Obviously, Jake Shields, you would think intuitively you would say that he's probably got the better stand-up by a good distance, but how much of that gap do you think Maia is actually, is focusing on that aspect over the last couple of years?
Oh, I would agree with you that it's close quite a bit, and it's appreciative you giving Jake some stand-up improvement, being better there. I don't think Jake has any KO power at all. I think he can be annoying. I think he can win rounds and pick up points, but he's not going to hurt Damian with his striking, I don't think. And I'll just say in terms of Jake and his jiu-jitsu, you're probably aware of this, but Jake is part of the greater Cesar Gracie family, and those guys are not intimidated by anybody's jiu-jitsu. They don't participate much in jiu-jitsu tournaments, but when you got the Diaz brothers, Gil Melendez, Dave Terrell, these guys all travel around at a big circuit, and it's not unusual for Jake to travel up to Santa Rosa for 2 or 3 days, and then over to Modesto for 2 or 3 days, and then have Gil and other guys come to his gym. So I really, really hope and cross my fingers that it goes to the ground a lot, but frankly, I would not be surprised if Jake wins the jiu-jitsu war.
You guys are listening to MMA Lockup. That's Dr. Gary Furness joining Jeremy and I in the studio here. Dr. Furness, speaking on his stand-up a little bit there, I was very impressed with Jake Shields before he came to the UFC.
Yeah, I think that just the Cesar Gracie striking in general is to annoy, pick up points, get guys to make mistakes. Really, that camp, with the possible exception of Gil, doesn't really have KO power in their own weight class.
Yeah, definitely. Well, Dr. Furness, we're looking forward to that card next week. I know you are, too. I'm very excited. I started looking at this card with Jeremy last week, and we were like, wow, that's a middle-of-the-week card that's coming up before the next UFC pay-per-view, and it looks phenomenal. Yeah,
it should be. I'll put a little plug. It's the second-best free card of the year up to the coming Sacramento, December 14th. That Fox card is going to be super loaded.
Help us out a little bit. Who all's on that as of tentative?
Oh, that's got the main event's going to be Josh Thompson against Pettis' first title defense.
Yeah, that's a fantastic fight.
It would ought to be even potentially better than that is Uriah Faber versus Michael McDonald.
Oh, yeah, that's also fantastic.
We were looking at that card last week, too, and man, the end of the year is shaping up to be one amazing time in mixed martial arts. If you're not a fan of mixed martial arts right now, you better get on board.
Get on the bandwagon.
Yeah, it's going to be good.
All right, well, Dr. Furness, we're not going to keep you too long. I know you got to get back to the lovely weather out there in California while we freeze to death in the Midwest.
Yeah, and I have to work on 4th grade homework.
Yes, you do. So, we'll reconvene next week. I know the card's probably going to be on next Wednesday, so maybe we'll try and do this Tuesday or Thursday?
Yeah, either way to talk more about it or after it would be good.
Awesome. That'll work, guys. You listen to MMA Lockup on Fox Sports 1190. Make sure you like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, do all that crazy stuff. When we get back, Jeremy and I are going to banter a little bit more. We might have some surprise guests for you. Make sure you stay tuned.